As is customary when the end of the year approaches, it's time for us to look back and reflect on the absolute worst that the art form of professional wrestling had to give us in 2017. So with that, I'm doing my own personal end-of-the-year awards that have no credibility to them beyond my own opinion. So if anybody gets mad, just keep in mind this isn't an official anything. It's just what I personally thought based on the stuff that I watched. So I broke it out into 9 categories, and let's get started. First of all, Tag Team of the Year, the worst Tag Team of the Year. This year was a fairly good year for tag team wrestling. I felt like if you look at companies like New Japan and Ring of Honor and even WWE at times, when you look at the Usos and New Day and what they've been able to do, and actually SmackDown's tag team division right now looks to be building up quite nicely. There wasn't a whole lot to really rag on as far as tag team wrestling goes. Then I remembered, oh yeah, Impact Wrestling had a tag division, and it wasn't very good. You got a knockoff version of LAX, you got a couple of other random teams that got thrown together, but one that really stood out to me as being particularly bad was the team of Crimson and Wilcox, known as the Veterans of War. Crimson was a guy that they tried to push way back in like the Hogan era, and it never really clicked. And they've brought him back sporadically ever since, and he's never clicked, which begs the question why the hell they keep bringing him back, because he never gets over. And this whole, like, oh, they're former military guys, so they're trying to form a tag team, an all-American tag team out of that to feud with LAX. Not a terrible idea, except that neither guy is that interesting or that great of a performer, so it just came off looking like a generic tag team that got thrown together. And pretty much once they were done with LAX, that was over, so yeah, they didn't last too long, and they're no longer with Impact Wrestling as we speak. So, yeah, they didn't achieve much, they didn't spark much interest, and they didn't do anything for me. So that's my pick for worst tag team of the year. Worst female performer of the year. Worst female superstar of the year. I'm gonna give that to Sexy Star, based entirely off of a match that she had at Triple Mania 25. I will not elaborate beyond that because that's coming back up later. But yeah, Sexy Star is my pick for worst female wrestler of the year. That's just moving on. That's all I'm going to say for now. Worst male superstar of the year. I had it down to 3 different options. Jinder Mahal, who might be the worst WWE champion of all time. Randy Orton, who had a phenomenally bad year, and Bray Wyatt, who seemed to really hit a wall this year as far as, like, I had said for years that they ruined his character and they booked him poorly, but the intrigue of the character seemed to carry him through that. This was the year where that shine finally seemed to wear off and just everything Bray Wyatt did just turned to crap. So, up until this recent feud with Matt Hardy. So, picking out of those 3, I'm actually going to go with Randy Orton, whose body of work this year was phenomenally terrible. Like, when you look at the matches he had with Bray Wyatt, the matches he had with Jinder Mahal, which did absolutely nothing to help Jinder Mahal get over, the terrible Punjabi prison match they had, the matches he had with Rusev that nobody liked, at least they kept him short, but, and even just recently in Clash of Champions, he was a part of that awful tag team match with the dual referees. It wasn't his fault, but again, it's another black eye on his resume this year. And his body of work was shockingly terrible, especially for a guy that won the Royal Rumble and was in the WWE title match at WrestleMania. Those are some pretty big spotlight moments for him, and his performances and his matches were just so terrible. Astoundingly bad. The House of Horrors, the match at WrestleMania with Bray, the 3 matches with Jinder, everything was bad. Wow! Randy Orton really stunk up the joint this year. He got so bad that I actually said, you know what? Keep the title on Jinder. I'm fine. Anything's better than Randy Orton. So Randy Orton gets my pick for worst superstar of the year. And that's really bad for a guy that's been on top and been a top-level player for the WWE for as long as he has. But that's the position we're in right now. So after that, we've got worst feud of the year. What was the worst feud? I'm going to give that to Bray Wyatt versus Finn Balor, which took place on Monday Night Raw. And they stretched it out for what felt like half of my life. They just kept having pay-per-view match after pay-per-view match after pay-per-view match, with Finn Balor getting the best at him at most encounters. This was another one of those feuds where everything Bray Wyatt did was completely ineffective against Finn, and I just didn't care. And then they started doing the build-up to Sister Abigail, and Bray Wyatt wearing Sister Abigail makeup, and it's probably fortuitous that Bray Wyatt got sick and they had to pull the plug on that, because it's like, yeah, it's probably for the best we didn't see that, because if the House of Horrors and the WrestleMania match are any indication, any kind of special theatrics with Bray weren't going to go over well. So, yeah. Worst moment of the year. I'm going to give that to Jinder Mahal winning the WWE title, because that was just a failed experiment from start to finish. They took a guy that was a jobber. He was actually jobbing to Finn Balor on Raw right before moving over to SmackDown, where they pushed him to the fucking moon. And so they took a guy who wasn't over, wasn't credible, put a belt on him, and then expected the fans to care. They did not care. The Indian fans, that market that they wanted to break into and use Jinder as the tool to do that, did not excite those fans. So he was just a failure in every conceivable way. It was just, he didn't get what they were going for with him. He didn't get that much heat, because most of his matches were met with crickets. He had a mediocre match with AJ Styles, of all people, on pay-per-view recently. He's just mediocre performance after mediocre performance, and it's like, look, the guy's just not... He's not ready for this spot, and I don't think he's capable of being this spot. And that's fine. Not everybody needs to be world champion, but he didn't deliver on anything. He wasn't an interesting character. He wasn't a good promo. He didn't have good matches. There's no appeal. The most appealing thing about him were the Singh brothers getting their asses kicked and bumped all over the place for him. That's it. It was just... It was a mistake to put the title on him. The reasoning behind putting on the title on him was lame. Thank God we never got that match with Lesnar, because that would have been terrible. But yeah, Jinder Mahal as WWE champion might be the worst WWE champion of all time, and that's saying a lot. But it was just an absolute failure from start to finish. And then from there, let's go into the worst weekly show of the year. This one was a little tough, because I got to a point where SmackDown and Raw pretty much defeated me, and I stopped watching week to week. Impact Wrestling was also really bad, especially after all the promise of rejuvenation and fresh start. Here we go. We're gonna wipe the slate clean. We're gonna start fresh, and we're gonna fix everything. They did not fix everything, and it was still the same boring mess with guys just, weird pushes happening. Then there was the whole situation with Jeff Jarrett, and they lost a bunch of guys and a bunch of deals, and the show's just a mess right now, and has been poor week to week. I guess if I had to pick a worst weekly show out of that, I would probably go with Impact. I would probably go, as bad as Raw was, as bad as SmackDown was, and as pointless as 205 Live is, there's something to be said for just how astonishingly terrible Impact Wrestling is, and I'm just like, how is that show still on the air? I don't know how they're still in business. I really don't, but oh well. So from there, we're going to go to the worst wrestling brand of the year, which I'm also going to give to Impact Wrestling, for a company that's fallen so hard and has done so terribly, and to put on as bad a shows as they've been putting on. It's amazing that they're still around. It's absolutely phenomenal, because who the fuck is still watching it? Please tell me. There's nothing intriguing going on. There's nothing good going on. It's just empty blah. And the America Top Team guy that they brought in, my God, he cut like the promo of the year for them. It's like their own wrestlers aren't even generating intrigue. They have to get like that guy to do it. Bound for Glory wasn't any good. Slammiversary was a good show, and I thought maybe it's like, all right, that's going to be the start of something. But then the whole Jarrett thing happened, and it's just a mess of the show. They've changed names more times than I care to remember. They were TNA, now they're in. Then they became GFW. Now they're back to being Impact Wrestling. And it's like, dude, you can't even keep the name of your company straight. I mean, I don't even know how to follow this show. It's just, Oh my god, it's so terrible. And I was a huge supporter of TNA in the mid-2000s. I was like, okay, you know what? They're an alternative. WWE doesn't do it for me a lot of the time. This is something different. It's great. And now it's like you couldn't pay me to sit through an episode of Impact. It's just so boring and so lifeless. And I'm just waiting for the company to die. It's just, can we close the book on that and move on? And let another company rise up to take its place. And I don't like to root for companies to die, but this brand is so poisoned and so just shrouded in its own negativity that what other fate is there? There's nothing left. My God. But anyway, from there, let's go into worst pay-per-view / special event of the year. This is... looking at all the special events. That includes the WWE pay-per-views, Impact Wrestling pay-per-views, ROH pay-per-views, any other shows, the New Japan big events, NXT TakeOver specials, even Ultima Lucha I would throw up there, although there's no way in hell Ultima Lucha's on a worst of list. Any special event in pro wrestling. What was the worst one that took place this year? Bound for Glory was terrible. I reviewed that, hated it. I thought it was bad. Triple Mania, Triple A's big show, was lousy, except for the main event, so at least it finished strong. Fastlane was an abysmal pay-per-view from WWE, not even just because of the 30-second main event. It was just bad from top to bottom. And WWE had a bunch of other, like, kind of meh, that happened pay-per-views, but there was one show that royally just pissed me off and broke me down to a point where I stopped watching WWE on a weekly basis. And that show was Battleground, the SmackDown exclusive pay-per-view. And I attended Battleground 2016, so to see the drop-off of how good that show was to this year was kind of amazing. But really what it was that broke me, and the opening tag match was good. I will say that. The opening tag match was good, but everything else was just filler garbage that did nothing for me. But really, it was the double main event that really broke me. For the 845th time, I get to see John Cena overcome the odds in stupid circumstances in that stupid flag match with Rusev, with stupid rules. And of course, Cena had to go over Rusev for the 900th time because Rusev wasn't done being buried. The match was stupid, annoying, dragged on way too long. I was begging for it to be over by the time it was finished, and we weren't done yet. Then we got Jinder Mahal defending the WWE Championship against Randy Orton in a Punjabi prison match. A match that features a structure that is aesthetically unpleasing to look at. You can barely see through it. When I did my review, I asked the question, can the live audience even see what's going on? Because I'm looking at the structure and like, that's got to be hard to actually watch what the hell's going on inside there. And the rule structure is stupid. I made the comparison, it feels like something out of a 90s Nickelodeon game show. And the match was painfully boring, overly long. The Singh brothers were the best part of it. Great Khali did a run-in at the end, which, whoopee, thank God we didn't get Orton versus Khali. That would, the year that Orton had, of like, don't put that on him too. I mean, Jesus. Holy Moses. So yeah, this show was this was just the show that defeated me. I felt deflated and beaten after it was done, and I just couldn't go back to watching WWE week after week after this. And I still continue to watch it from time to time, but on a weekly basis, I pretty much stop. And actually, what I've started doing is I will wait for Raw and SmackDown to happen, read the results, and then read the things that are interesting to me, like the Woken Matt Hardy stuff. I'm like, okay, oh, he plays chess with a fish? I want to watch that. Everything else, meh. Nah. I watch NXT every week, so if you want to count that as part of WWE, but the main roster shows, I'm just, holy God, no. But now that Jinder's not the champion, they've wisely kept the belt on AJ, and the tag division seems to be beefing up, I might give SmackDown a chance again, but Battleground just, oh, whew. Wow, that was... I haven't watched too many pay-per-views that left me feeling that bad when it was over, but that show, I felt like a piece of my soul had been ripped out. That was truly remarkably bad. But From there, we come to our 9th category, which you would probably expect to be Match of the Year. And you're right. However, I'm going to do something a little bit different and stretch it out. So for the final category, Match of the Year, you're going to get my top 10 worst matches of 2017. I'm going to recount the top 10 matches that I fucking hated this year, and the ones that are going to get called out. So let's start with number 10. Team Raw versus Team Smackdown from Survivor Series. Started off great. It was exciting the first 5-10 minutes or so, and you got all the different pairings, and you got Bobby Roode showing it up, and Nakamura looking like a star for once, and Finn Balor being a star, and it's like, yeah, this is going pretty well. And then everybody got eliminated, and it became the Triple H show, and I'm like, oh. That was deflating, so I hated that. Number 9, I referenced Fastlane earlier. I couldn't decide which one match from Fastlane to put on there. I don't think any one of them are bad enough to count on their own onto this list. So fuck it, I'm just going to put for the number 9 spot the worst of Fastlane. The worst matches from Fastlane that really dragged that show down. Jinder Mahal and Cesaro had a completely boring match that was thrown out there to kill time, and nobody came off looking good when it was done. Big Show and Rusev had a really super boring, pointless match that was used to fill time and was absolutely terrible. Bayley and Charlotte had a complete clusterfuck of a women's championship match. So bad. So bad. And that's a large cry from the type of matches that they were having in NXT. It's like, what the hell happened here? Like, they were botching, and the booking of having Sasha interfere for Bayley made it look like Bayley cheated to win. They ruined Charlotte's undefeated streak on pay-per-view for nothing. It was bad. It was a super terrible match. And, yeah, that was the worst of Fastlane. Again, you're probably expecting me to throw Goldberg versus Kevin Owens in there. I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. That match got to the point, and it furthered storyline build for Kevin Owens and Jericho. So it's like, all right, at least something was accomplished. I will give it that. At least something was gained from it. I can at least say it's like, you know what? That was not a complete, completely terrible thing to do. So that's my number 9 spot. Number 8 is going to go to an Impact Wrestling match, the worst Impact Wrestling match I saw this year. Abyss vs. Grado in the Monsters Ball at Bound for Glory 2017. And if you want any indicator of how far TNA has fallen, look at what the Monster Balls were like when they were doing them back in 04, 05, and 06, and then look at this clusterfuck of a match, and it's just, oh. You had interference from Rosemary that didn't make any sense. You had a premature ringing of the bell, which didn't help. And just general sloppiness, shitty, garbage, hardcore wrestling. And it was just a really, really awful match. One that was, I think they were designing to be one of the spotlight matches on the show, and it ended up being a train wreck. So, didn't go very well. Did not. At number 7, we have the match that Dave Meltzer said was the worst match of the year. Alexa Bliss defending the Raw Women's title against Bayley in a kendo stick match from Extreme Rules 2017. A match that did more to undercut a babyface than any match I could possibly think of, where they had Bayley say in a promo, I've been watching Tommy Dreamer and Sandman to get prepped for this match, and I can get hardcore, I can get extreme, and I can, I can use a kendo stick. Come match time, she looks completely incompetent, can't use it, can't get violent, and then gets beat. I mean, it's like they were out to ruin Bayley, because they made her look like a liar and a fraud, and completely incompetent, and it was just like, what did they seek to accomplish with that? Who put this match together? Like, if they want to go the route of Bayley not wanting to get violent and wanting to be a pure athlete or, not get down and dirty, okay, fine. But then don't have her go out there and talk about how she's, like, been watching Tommy Dreamer. It's like, yeah, I can do this. And, I mean, that's just silly. But, yeah, absolutely terrible match. And one that did Bayley no favors at all whatsoever. Number 6, Bray Wyatt versus Randy Orton at WrestleMania 33. A match that, again, served as kind of a microcosm of Bray Wyatt's whole career, where it's like, they do creepy things with him, they put a lot of work into the theatrics of Bray Wyatt, but at the end, none of it has any consequences, like him projecting the images on the ring. Looks creepy at first, didn't go anywhere, didn't mean anything, and Orton just beat him anyway, so it just resulted in a very weird and awkward match, where the thing he was doing had no impact, so what was the point? Match was terrible. kind of deflated me, almost ruined WrestleMania for me, but then we got Goldberg Lesnar, and that fixed it right up. And then Undertaker and Reigns brought me right back down. But anyway, this match was awful, and just a small preview of what we were going to get just a little bit later with these guys. Next up at number 5 is Randy Orton versus Jinder Mahal in the Punjabi prison match, which I've already talked about. The structure is aesthetically unpleasing. The match was boring. We got a run-in from Khali. And Jinder was not any more interesting by the time it was over. Just a complete failure all around. I hope to God they never do another Punjabi prison match. Then at number 4, we've got yet another Randy Orton match. My God, he did not have a good year. Randy Orton versus Bray Wyatt in the House of Horrors match from Payback. This felt like an attempt from WWE to try and copy what Lucha Underground does with their cinematic stuff. The difference is Lucha Underground, whenever they do like a cinematic fight scene in the backstage area or whatever, it's done to advance the story. This was just Orton goes into his house, they fight, then Bray like leaves the room for some reason or disappears or whatever. Then Orton sees some creepy stuff, and then Bray attacks him again, they fight, and then it's just that same cycle. It felt like I was watching a bad horror movie trailer. Not a bad horror movie, but like a bad trailer for a horror movie. It was just very weirdly produced and put together, and not at all interesting, and it didn't work. I don't know, maybe Lucha Underground are the only ones that fully get how to do something like that. I don't know, but like I said, there was no flow to it. There was no story to it. It was just Orton goes into a room, creepy shit happens, Bray attacks him. Orton goes into a room, creepy shit happens, Bray attacks him. There was no flow to it. And I think that was its major downfall. So it didn't work, and because it was so unique in its presentation, it's one that stands out immediately when I think of the worst matches of the year. Then at number 3, we have John Cena, boom, 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 versus Rusev in a flag match at Battleground 2017. I already talked about this a little bit, but what really killed this match, beyond like the John Cena overcoming the odds and the match going too long and Rusev already being beat by him, so what's the point? The rule structure was completely fucking stupid, because it was basically like, it was almost like a kiddie game where it's like, all right, take your flag and put it in the podium on the stage. There were times where I'm like, okay, why is he like setting up a table when he could just put his flag there now? Why didn't he just throw his opponent's flag into the crowd and then run? Why isn't he running? What? I mean, there was just no urgency to end the match as quickly as possible. It was just them running around doing whatever random crap they could do, so it made the match make no sense. And in the end, it was a complete train wreck of a match that made me beg for death. So, yeah, did not like that match. And of course, because it's a worst of list, I have to get John Cena on there some way, somehow. Even in his limited schedule, he manages to piss me off. Then we go to number 2 of the year. Second worst match of the year, I'm going to give it to the main event of WrestleMania 33, Roman Reigns versus The Undertaker in a no-holds-barred match. I've been saying that Undertaker needed to retire for years. I've been saying it for years. I'm like, he's looking worse and worse. It's time. It's time to pull the plug on this, call it a career, and just move on move on into the sunset. People fought me on that for a while. After this match, I don't hear anybody fighting me that Undertaker shouldn't retire. Except for the people that's like, I don't want Roman Reigns to be his last match. It's like, dude, it's over. It's just, he's broken. He's broken down. He's old. He can't do it anymore. Like, that's just, and it's sad, but, you watch that match and it's like, the guy should not be out there anymore. He just shouldn't. And Undertaker held on longer than most guys do, and that's a testament to his longevity and his abilities, but he's beyond that point now, and it's time to hang it up. It's time to move on, go into the Hall of Fame, and it's time. We need to move on past Undertaker. I know that's hard for a lot of people to accept, but this match was terrible, and I think it won. I think it made a lot of people see my side of it, where I've been saying he needs to retire, and I think a lot of people agreed with me after this match was done, because it was truly awful. And it's unfortunate that WrestleMania had to close with such a terrible match. And it's a shame that this terrible match might just be the last one that Undertaker ever has. But that's the hand we've been dealt, unfortunately. But before I reveal my number 1 worst match of the year, let me say that It looks like I'm beating up on WWE in this list. Because, out of 10 spots, the nine spots I've announced so far, 8 of them were WWE. That is not indicative of WWE being a piece of shit, although it has been at various points. It's more indicative of they are so oversaturated and have so much content, and they try so many stupid things to try and fill whatever large amount of time that they're trying to fill, that it almost opens up the door for this type of crap to happen, because it's like there's just too much content to keep up with. And I think scaling back the content would be really good for them and really help them in the long run. But it's like the WWE's become victims of their own success. But moving on from there, let's get into my pick for number 1 worst match of the year, and I alluded to it earlier. From Triple Mania 25, Sexy Star versus Lady Hamada versus Ayako Hamada versus Lady Shani versus Rosemary in a 4-way match for the Reina de Reina women's title of AAA. It's really unfortunate in pro wrestling whenever personal problems and personal disputes spill out into the ring. It shouldn't happen. It's terrible when it does. It cheats the audience out of a good match. It displays unprofessionalism. And it just makes for a very awkward situation all around. And you get unfortunate situations like what happened to Rosemary, with Sexy Star being pissed off about what was going on during the match. And I don't know if her problems with Hamada and Shani, where it looked like at times they were legit shooting on each other, and Sexy Star got frustrated and even sat out of the match for a good portion of it. Just like, what the fuck? I'm not getting in on this, and I'm not I'm not trying to defend anybody or say that anybody was right. What I'm saying is it's absolutely wrong for personal disputes, whatever it is, to spill out into the ring, and for somebody to almost get seriously injured because of it. It felt like, and again, I don't know, it felt like Sexy Star assumed that Rosemary was in on whatever it was that Hamada and Shani were pulling on her. Rosemary was not, and she was just the innocent victim in an unfortunate situation. And I wish things like that wouldn't happen. But it was an unfortunate event that took the wrestling world by storm and gave it some bad press. And, hopefully things like that don't happen ever again, because it's terrible, and it's just a black eye in professional wrestling whenever something like that does happen. So, that is my whole video on the worst of 2017 for professional wrestling. Thank you all for joining me, and I will be back later with the best of 2017. The best of 2017. I can no longer talk. These matches and moments and wrestlers were so bad, they have destroyed my ability to speak. But in any case, I will be back with the best of 2017 video, so it will be a little bit more positive in that one. So stay tuned for that.